Hi, I'm Martin Mulcare, and today I have the pleasure of having a chat with Trevor Matthews, who was the president of the Actuaries Institute of Australia back in 1997. Welcome, Trevor.
Well, thank you, Martin. That's a long time ago. It's interesting to look back and think back to those quite exciting days. Yeah.
And that's what we want to think about today, and how much of
Okay.
that is still relevant in 2026. So, before we get into the leadership skills you displayed or found valuable in that period, perhaps from your glittering CV of leadership roles in the corporate world in particular, perhaps you could provide some highlights to add some context to the audience. What do you think the audience would like to know about your leadership experience?
Well, I think every leader's experience is different, a different context, different history, different challenges. But there are some essentials, I think, that are absolutely fundamental. I've been a student of leadership, if you like, for a long, long time, and I'm always open to new ideas and what can I learn? How can I be a better leader? And I hope that during our conversation, we touch on a couple of points that one or two people might say, "Oh, wait a minute, that's something I should think more about. I should do more about." So that's really where I'm up to. I've had some wonderful experience. I've really enjoyed nearly all of it, and I've had some challenges, but some great opportunities. But leadership is fundamental.
So, what would you say for the audience? Highlights of your executive career?
Well, I think, I didn't set out wanting to lead a large company or anything like that. I bumped my way up a corporate ladder. I went to university, stumbled into the actuarial profession, stumbled into a cadetship with what turned out to be a fundamental part of my life, a company called Legal and General. And then just sort of look 3 years ahead each time. And I found that, I had to get to university because my parents didn't go, had to get through the actuarial subjects at uni, getting the A's and B's in those days, and then had to qualify. And then I thought, oh, right. And then I had a job and they offered me another job. And so it was a series of short-term 3 or 4 year sort of thing, objectives. And gradually I found myself going up the corporate ladder and I enjoyed it. I got a lot of fun, a lot of satisfaction out of trying to mobilize people, whether it's a small actuarial team or it's, at one stage I had, I think, 33,000 people reporting into me. It
Wow,
was
wow.
astonishing. How do you communicate? How do you inspire? How do you organise them so that we're all pulling in the one direction?
Yeah, yeah, great challenges. All right, so let's go back to the business role that you had when you were first elected to council. What was your day job there?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I was first elected to council prior to my being on council again for the
Oh, okay, I hadn't
presidency. I was
appreciated
a,
that.
a
Sorry.
very young actuary, and Tig Melville, God bless him, at the time was the president. And somehow I got myself, or I was asked, and I nominated, and I got onto council. So that was wonderful. Meeting the senior members of the profession as a young, idealistic sort of recent fellow. And then I got heavily involved in the business career, and I went up the ranks, and I became the boss of the company in Australia, Legal and General, which was a medium-sized life insurance company at the time. And then when I was given that job at the age of 36, the wise masters in the UK said, "Trevor, you're too young really to take this job. You're going to run out of road." I said, "Oh, I'm not going to run out of road. This is really exciting." Anyway, sure enough, 7 years later, I ran out of road. And so I was headhunted away, and this is to answer your question,
Yeah.
to the National Australia Bank. Now, NAB at the time was getting into financial services and wealth management. The banks had discovered this was a good area or thought it was a good area to get, and they wanted a life insurance, well, they got me to come in and run not just the financial services stuff, but the old-fashioned banking stuff,
Wow.
mortgages and branches. I mean, it's quite amazing for a young
Yeah.
executive, I suppose. So the answer to your question, yes, I'd just taken the job at NAB in this very important new role.
Yeah.
And of course, I went to the bosses there, Don Argus and Frank Secudo, and said, "Is it okay to do this?" And they very graciously let me do it.
Wow.
Now, the interesting thing was that I didn't put my hand up wanting to get on council and do this role necessarily, but of course as you know, I think it's evident. I love the profession, and if I'm asked to do something, almost every time I'll do it if I can. So I was actually, because my history, I was the chief executive of a medium-sized company. So I was in the paper a bit, and in the old days it was a lot different to now, newspapers, magazines, and that sort of thing. And I had a relatively high profile, and the profession was coming up to its 100th anniversary in Australia. And one of the wise elder gentlemen, wonderful man, Ron Champion, literally tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Trevor, look, we'd like you to put your hat in the ring, come back on council and see, we might elect you as, who knows?" And that would help raise the profile of the profession in our centenary year. So I got very excited about that, of course, and I did, and it all worked. It wasn't preordained, but it all worked as a plan, and I ended up being president in our centenary year. And that was a big deal for us. We were only a small profession. I think when I was president, I handed out fellow number 1,000, and we're over 3,000 today. So it was still relatively small, but we wanted to make a bit of noise about what we were trying to do as a profession. And so we planned, we had a couple of international meetings. We had our normal, actuarial summit meeting ourselves. But we were able to attract presidents of lots of different organisations, actuarial organisations, to Australia. And it was a wonderful year. We did raise the profile. We did enhance, I think, the reputation of actuaries. One of the most exciting things for me was the honour of presenting Greg Taylor, who we all know and love, with a gold medal, the first gold medal of our Institute of Actuaries here in Australia. So that's the answer. That's what happened.
All right. Well, when we discuss leadership skills as president, you might pick out some of the ones that are unique to centenary years.
Yes.
So we've heard about the motivation for the elder statesmen. You mentioned Ron. So their motivation for you to becoming president. What was your motivation to take up the invitation to potentially, or in the end, to become the president?
Well, I thought at the time the role of the actuary was underappreciated by the vast bulk of people. We were still relatively unknown. There were jokes about, how do you spot the extrovert actuary? He's the one looking at the other person's shoes and all this sort of stuff. So I was quite enthusiastic about trying to change that, trying to convince the key people in the population that we have a meaningful role. We can help, we can guide public policy, we can provide expert advice, and we can make the world a better place. So I was very much excited about that opportunity. At the same time, it was exciting for me to be able to try and mobilise the actuarial forces inside our profession and get people excited, proud of what we've done, and excited about the future. I chose a theme. It's interesting. I chose a theme for my presidential year because it was the end of our first century, of shaping the next century.
Nice.
And that was a useful sort of umbrella on which to hang a whole lot of different initiatives.
Okay. So clearly you've had a whole range of leadership skills which you've developed in your corporate world. What would you describe as the key leadership skills for leading a profession? The Australian profession, you're the head. What were the leadership skills you thought were required when you were president?
Well, I think this is part of the universality, I think, of leadership. I think that as I say, I'm a bit of a student of this. I think a lot of people are, but I think one of my favourite quotations about leadership, surprisingly, comes from Napoleon Bonaparte, where he said that the role of the leader is a dealer in hope. And I think that's a really powerful comment. What it makes you think about where you are, and I think it's important to sort of respect the past, be realistic about the present, but also be optimistic about the future. So that's what I thought was a real opportunity to sort of mould our profession, make our profession, at the time, smaller though it was, tighter, more focused, and more looking towards the future.
Nice. So, and very appropriate for the centenary year, and as you said, looking forward to the next century. This idea of a deal in hope, it sounds like it was very pertinent to that year.
Yeah, well, I think it was, and of course, we embellished it by various activities, as I said, some conferences and celebrations and all that sort of stuff. So we made it a fun Yeah, and I think that's another part of the leadership that, you can get bogged down in all the detail. You can
Mm.
get bogged down today in compliance and risk and all that sort of stuff. That's all very important. But what are you in business for? What are you in the profession for? Well, it's a bit about fun and profit. So you've got to sort of balance the two. And I'm, as you can see, I'm a very optimistic sort of person. I sort of look to the future,
Mm.
try and make the most of where we are now, but take people with me. Yeah.
Okay. So, what would you say in terms of leadership skills that you had already um, come to grips with in corporate? What was different about leading a profession? What were some different types of skills that you needed as president?
I think that what's different as president, you're there for the members.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the fundamental point. You're there to serve the members. You're not serving the shareholder. You're not serving London or wherever the shareholder is, or the stock market. So you really are looking out for the members, and everything you do should be tested in that lens. You're not trying to build an empire. You're not trying to grow the profession to
Mhm.
be massive or anything
No.
like that. It will be what it will be, but you're trying to make decisions that actually make the profession a better profession, more attractive for bright people who have got a bit of get up and go,
Mhm.
and also better respected and better known out there in the community. So it was different. I didn't have the power that you have as the representative of the shareholder, but to all extents and purposes, it was very similar, but it was a little bit different.
Okay. So, yeah, I think that's a really good differentiations, and that there's like a really explicit authority.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so tell me about your influencing skills. As a leadership, there's idea of influencing rather than being.
Directive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, it's really interesting that this is a long time ago and the world has changed. But at that time, we still had a lot of authoritarian control and
Mm.
direct in organizations, in
Yeah.
society. And it was the birth of the sort of team-based approach to things. And I was very much brought up on that basis, and I very much applied that. And I think I'm lucky in my history. When you look back, I was lucky enough to go to a 1 week course at Harvard twice. And, it's the Harvard experience, high pressure, case studies, all
Mhm.
sorts of different things going on. And I said to the professor at the end of the second one of those, what's it all about? How do you get sustainable success in any organization? And he said, oh, yeah. And, we all agree you can ramp it up in the short term and then it falls apart. How do you build sustainable success? And I said, rather naively, of course, it's all about strategy. You've got to get the strategy right. And he said, yeah, no, that's important. However, he said, and I thought, I got this question answered wrong. He said, yeah, strategy is important. Yes, but the world can change. You've got to change the strategy. Or you might not have the strategy quite right. You've got to change the strategy. So I said thoughtfully, therefore, it's all about execution. He said, yes, it's all about execution. How do you therefore get yourself organized so that you can execute whatever the then strategy is? And he said, write this down. And I wrote this down, and I've used this ever since all around the world. He said, right, what you've got to do is get your organization, whether it's a council or a church group or a sporting club or a FTSE 100 company, you've got to get the place organised so that the people stand shoulder to shoulder out there and compete aggressively on the outside in the interest of the company, but at the same time, collaborate superbly on the inside. Now, they're very wise words. They're very hard. They're easy to say, very hard to do. It's natural for human beings to form their little groups, whether it's the actuaries and the accountants, or it's the head office and branch, or it's London and here, or whatever it is. You form your little group, you look
Mm.
after each other. That's perfectly normal. But the job of the leader is to rise above that and get people to lift themselves above that and look over the whole enterprise, organisation, council, whatever it is, so that we're all in this together. We're all genuinely helping each other. And
Yeah.
so part of my leadership roles has always been bashing down those silos that
Mm.
naturally occur in different organisations. So we really do help each other.
Yeah. Great model.
Yeah,
Aggressive competition on the outside, but
yeah,
really healthy,
collaborative. Yeah,
strong collaboration on the inside.
Yes, yes,
And
that's
even
right.
more so, I guess, in a profession. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Because you get your different experts and they're
Yeah.
all very good in their
Yeah.
various fields, but we're in this together, chaps. How do we,
Mm.
what's the greater good? What do we do to help each other and move the whole thing forward? Yeah.
Yeah. Something going back to something you said earlier. There, some things you think about being universal.
Yes.
So, thinking about the president's role 30 years later, thinking about the world almost 30
Yes.
years later, what
Yep.
different leadership skills do you think might be required now for the
Well,
president?
yeah. It was, in a way, it was easier because we didn't have instant communication. You
Mm,
had time to think and to respond. Sometimes you didn't have
yeah,
much time, but you had some time, And I tell the story how when I was in Scotland, I was with a company called Standard Life in Scotland, and we got caught out. We did something wrong. One of our people did something wrong, and so I was very distressed, or not distressed, but I thought this shouldn't happen. We should have a better system than this. And so I got my team in on the Friday afternoon. I said, listen, chaps, we've got a bit of a problem here. This thing went wrong. And I didn't know about it. I was caught out. And I said, that's really bad. We've got to get a system so that if something goes wrong or if there's a problem,
mm,
get it up the chain so
yeah,
that the chief knows about it. I said, if you tell me the bad news, 20 minutes or half a day before it gets to the chairman or the press or the regulator
mm,
or the public, we can work on that. And so they all said, yeah, that's right. And of course, in any organisation, and including the institute, the there's a lot happening down the bottom, and that's the good news comes straight up the top straight away, like a lightning on a lightning rod. But the bad news seems to get stopped at the different levels of what people sorted
mm,
out and all that. So I said, you've got to promise me, you've got to get your people organised so that the bad news comes straight up and we can deal with it. That's our job, to deal with the bad news. So we go home over the weekend, come back in on the Monday morning, and they're all lined up outside my office. I said, what are you doing? And I said, hey, boss, I got some bad news. I got some news. I said, that's not quite what I meant. So the point is, it was easier in many ways because we had 24 hours or we had half a day to get ourselves organised and react. But today it's a lot faster, and so you've got to rely on your people much more perhaps than
mm.
when we did in the old days. You've got to have the right culture, the right vision, the right incentives in place, such that the people behave as you might behave if you were put under pressure at the front line in a certain circumstance. Yeah.
No, very insightful. We really shrunk the
Yes.
time to respond,
Yes.
to make decisions.
Yes. That's right.
What else might be different in terms of skills required of the president these days?
Well, I think communication is still absolutely
Mm,
fundamental. So, how does the president grapple with, conquer the communication opportunities that are there today?
mm,
In my time, it was written word, it was printed word, and in my executive roles, I used to send out a note every Friday morning, just to everybody, whether it was my little team in the early days or the 33,000 people I mentioned at Aviva, just saying what I've been doing during the week, what was good, what was bad, what our competitors were doing, and a little thought for the week at the end of the week. And I said, send your thought in and we might use it next week and all that. So I had a bit of it, but it was interesting because I had interaction with every single member on my staff, or there was the opportunity for every single member to engage with
mm.
me. And interesting, I didn't realise this at the time, get to know me quite well,
Yeah.
get to know what I was excited about,
Mm,
not so excited about, what I thought was important, not important. And I think that enabled me to have a sort of a supportive culture in place.
yes.
Now, today, it's a lot harder.
Yeah.
How does the leader imprint himself or herself on the organisation? Because there's no doubt it's still the same. They look people. I used to do this as I was growing up and
Mm,
coming through organisation. You always look at the top person and say, what are they doing? What are they really doing? What's going on here? You do take a lot of signals from them. So the leader today is under more scrutiny than
yes.
I was, I think, in my day.
Yeah. Yeah. So that scrutiny, that's real. Does that, in your opinion, make for more risk averse leadership because of that scrutiny?
I think in some people it does, and certainly with the burden, the regulatory burden that we all face in the different areas, that's causing people to be more
Yeah,
cautious. But again, that's really interesting, isn't it? I've got this sort of hobby horse about what do actuaries do next, and I do think, and I think the institute's onto this globally and certainly here. Risk management is a really, really important area for it. It may not be the sexiest area,
yeah,
but I fundamentally believe there's no reason why a lot of organisations outside financial services shouldn't have more sophisticated risk management
yeah,
practices in place. And, if you think about, companies that have long-term horizons for different, like aircraft fleets, like mining,
yeah.
like building new plants that are going to take building an airport or something. I mean, there's a lot of long-term risks out there that I think would benefit from an actuarial mind and training and analysing and helping. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to do more than we've been doing recently.
Well, we start with that one in terms of outlook for the profession, because Trevor, I know you're still very deliberate about your thoughts about the profession. You keep an eye on
Yep,
trends, keep an eye on numbers.
yep,
So,
yep.
what is your broad kind of perspective on the future of the profession?
Well, I think we're attracting good people.
Yeah,
I'm convinced, and I've had a bit of an personal analysis of this that we're maintaining standards. That's good, but whichever way you look at it, we're producing a lot of new
mm,
actuaries every year. So at the same time, we're seeing some of the traditional areas decline, life insurance in particular, where even just recently another company was gobbled up by another one. So the opportunity in that traditional area
mm,
has reduced, and we've seen that in other like defined benefit pensions in previous generations.
yeah,
We've benefited from general insurance. That's been a wonderful, wonderful field for us, and we're doing some great work as a profession there. So my point is, what's next? What else can we do? Data science, data analytics, of course, but we're not uniquely placed in that area. We've got some very good, strong perspectives to add to that, but others can do a lot of that as well. But the risk area, I think, is the one where we could be doing more. And interesting, in part of my research going back into the profession, I came across a president many, many decades ago who was saying the same sort of thing, that
right.
why can't we apply an actuarial mind to some of these other risks out there in the community? So yeah, I'm very concerned, but I think we need strong leadership of the profession to actively try and engage in these other areas. And we need to find people that are doing it already and lift them up, make them heroes,
Yeah,
and all that sort of thing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Some good spotlighting for
Yes.
those who are doing such
Yes.
good work in these areas. Yeah, it's going
Yes.
to be
Yeah.
required in your opinion.
Yes, I think so. I do think so, and I think Quantium is the best example at the moment, where I think Adam Driussi now, I think they employ more fellows than any other company, which is quite remarkable. So they've been real trailblazers in that particular area. But let's find others in other areas as well.
Yeah, and I think you're highlighting risk management, especially in more
Yes.
diverse
Yep.
industries. Yeah,
Yep.
good one, good one. So, shall we wrap up with same question they're asking each person? Your top tip for actuaries who are aspiring to leadership roles.
Oh
What's
yeah.
your
No,
top
no.
tip?
Well, go for it is what I say. Go for it. Get out and do it. Have a go. It's interesting, isn't it? The actuary is often quite careful, conservative, risk averse, maybe.
Yep.
But I say to you, nothing's going to happen if you stay in the back room. And I tell the story that as I grew up through the profession, two of us qualified at once. They hadn't had new actuaries. We had a real dearth of actuaries in the
Yeah.
community and in that company, Legal and General. They got two new actuaries in one. What are we going to do? So they put the other guy into superannuation, quite right, and then threw me into general insurance. And I thought, oh, this is all a bit difficult. It was all new. There were only two or three of us in the country. But it was wonderful. We formed a little community, we helped each other, and we went for it. Another story is that as I went through, we closed down our general insurance business, but that's another story after doing some actuarial analysis of the outstanding claims for workers'
Okay.
comp. So I went back onto the life ship and they said, now we want you to run the superannuation area. I thought, wait a minute, I don't know anything about superannuation. I mean, I'm a life insurance now general, but heavens, and super was complicated even in those days with legislative change and history. I said, oh, gee. Anyway, but I bit my tongue. I said, yes, I'll have a go. I'll have a go. And I had a go, and it very quickly I realized that I didn't have to know all that wonderful history, that colourful history. But what I did, what was important, was knowing what the Treasurer said last Tuesday or what the papers were saying today, and capturing that and then repackaging it and explaining the complexity to the people, my natural audiences of salespeople, financial advisors, administrators. So I benefited greatly. I became the expert, believe it or not, in that at that time, in that place, in superannuation.
Yeah.
So that was a real thrilling experience in retrospect, although it was scary in prospect. So I do say honestly to people, you've got a lot of qualities, you've got a lot of capabilities, you've got a lot of potential. Go for it. Just go out there and have a go. See what happens. What's the worst that can happen? So yes, and leadership is wonderful. It's so exciting when you've got a team. You know whether it's a sporting team or whatever it is. When the team's firing well, when people are getting on, when they're genuinely committed to the one cause and they're helping each other when somebody stumbles, it's a very and you can change the world. So yeah, my basic is go for it. Basic advice is to go for it. Yeah.
Simple advice, go for it. But what I thought was valuable is that you backed it up with your own personal
Yes.
experience
Yeah.
and those examples. Especially, it's easy to go for it in your comfort zone, but you're having to
Yeah.
go for it
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
areas where you don't even have the technical skills. So it's quite
That's right.
remarkable.
Yeah, no, it was brave, foolish, perhaps, but not foolish in retrospect. It worked out very, very well. Very grateful to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Trevor, it has been an absolute treat to have a chat
Yeah, thank
today.
you.
I love
I've
the way
enjoyed it.
that you illustrated your guidance, advice, and insights with such good stories from your rich actuarial and leadership background. So thank you very
Yeah.
much again.
No, it's a pleasure. I've really enjoyed it, as you might have noticed from the way I reacted. So good on you, Martin. Keep up the good work. And Julia, keep up the great work. You're doing some really good stuff, encouraging actuaries to get into the leadership roles. Thank you.
Thanks again.
Thank you.